Hi guys, welcome to Web Technologies. We're still on Laravel for beginners and we'll be looking at Laravel database where we'll be talking about the Eloquent and the query builder. It is always fun when you're learning a framework and you're figuring out the data side. So I'll be moving to the routes to create a musician route whereby we're going to get all musicians from a database. Right there in the routes, move to the web.php to create a route. So we're going to go this way. Get sections. So when you navigate to the musicians page, it's going to call on the musicians controller. Which is actually going to point to the index method. So we have it set this way. You have to save it. And I'm going to be creating the musicians controller right from the terminal. And I'm going to be using Homestead as my development server, in which I'll start up from the terminals. I'm going to change directory to the project sitting in my local machine. CD new project. From here, I'm going to start up the Homestead server. Afterwards, I'm going to call on the Vagrant box, which I have a copy of my local project. So I'm going to start up my server using the Vagrant. Up to start up the server. Here we go. We have our server started. From here, I'm going to call on the virtual box, which is actually going to be the Vagrant box. So I'm going to issue out this command to actually navigate to the Vagrant box, which is Vagrant SSH. So we're right there in the Vagrant box, and I'll be moving to the directory of this particular project on the Vagrant box. So I'm going to actually change directory to code. New project. That's fine. We're right in the Vagrant box. Now I'm going to issue out the command to create the controller, which is the musicians controller. So I'm going to run PHP Artisan make controller new musicians controller. PHP Artisan make controller musicians controller. Click on enter to create that controller. Controller created successfully. So let's get to look at the controller. You find out in app HTTP controllers, you have the musicians controller.php. So now I'm going to pass in the method, which is public function index. return view. So we're going to call on the musicians folder and the index.blade.php. So from here we're going to create an index.blade.php. Let me collapse this. Right in the resources, on the views, we have to create a folder called musicians. Inside the musicians, we need to create a file called index.blade.php. That's cool. So right there we've talked about the layout files. Whereby we'll have we yielded the header, the content, and the footer, which is going to be predominant to all other pages that call or that extends the layout file. So we have to extend the layout file in the index.blade. So we do that quickly. Extends layout this way, and we call on the section which is actually going to be the content. Use at stop to close that entry. So inside the section, we have the h1 tag, and we call all musicians. That's fine. Save that out, and we got to show this. So we're going to actually use the Chrome. Let me launch it, Chrome, so that we're going to be able to display the index of the musicians page. So right, get it from the homestead. I'm not going to restore any pages. We have the homestead.app/musicians. Let's put in my password. /musicians. Can you see we have all the musicians, the h1 tag set appropriately. So from here we'll be moving to the query builder and ORM, which is also the Eloquent, whereby we'll be fetching data from the database. So from here we'll go to the config. We have the config file where we have the database.php. In here we have the database connection name, which we have our default connection as MySQL. We have different connections here: SQLite, MySQL, Postgres, and we can also have the SQL Server as well. So these are all different connections, right, embedded in Laravel. And I'll be using the SQLite because it's just like a file tab database. Whereby if you're using an application that gets lots of traffic, I will recommend you to use MySQL or Postgres. So we'll be using SQLite for simple application, and it's quite easy to set up. So I'm going to change the default database connection to SQLite. Just this way, save out. So the database part is going to be database.sqlite. So that's cool. So I'll be creating our database whereby we can have the database.sqlite right in the database directory. So I move back to the terminals, and I'm going to type touch. Let me first of all clear all. So we have a fresh terminal, touch database / database dot SQLite. As the database will be creating, so click on enter to create the database. So I'll move to the database folder to get that showed. Can you see that? The database.SQLite. That takes us down to migration, which is a nice PHP way to describe the schema for our table. I.e. creating a table, or when you want to update a table, or you're trying to insert to a table, So we'll be using migration. We have to migrate the database, and right there, Laravel has 2 migration files which I've deleted, because we're actually not going to be needing it. But we'll be creating our own migration, so I'll be doing that right now using the PHP Artisan. So let me run this command for you to see something quickly. We have the ability to make migration right in the PHP Artisan to create a new migration file. So I'll scroll down back to our project and clear it. So I'll be creating our first migration, the PHP Artisan make migration create musicians data table. Create, the name of the table will be musicians data. So we're going to create a migration, which is the musicians data table, while the name of the table will be musicians data. Right there, we've created a migration called musicians data. So that's the name of the table over there. So from here, we're going to actually migrate the data. But before doing that, let's quickly look at the migration and do some editing. So I'll actually refresh the tree so that we're going to see the migration. And you see the musicians data table. So we have the fields, which is the first increment ID, and we're going to be passing another kind of field, which is going to be the name, which is actually depicting the name of the musician. So that's actually going to be a string, and so it's going to actually hold on to a field of name. We have the timestamp, which is okay, and we have it this way. So we have the function up to create a table, and we have the reverse of the migration, which actually drops the table if it exists. So this is actually going to reverse the creation of the table. That's cool. So from here, we're going to be migrating our database. About we're going to issue a command PHP Artisan migrate. So we've actually migrated the table, musicians data table, successfully. So from here, we'll be moving to another command which is called the PHP Artisan Tinker. Let's get to look at what this actually does. It's a handy command whereby we're going to play around with it, and we're going to try some things like simple arithmetic. We're going to actually echo out full. So from here we'll be creating a new musician using the query builder right from the PHP Artisan Tinker. So let's quickly create that. So I'm going to run db table, and which table are we talking about? We're talking about the musician's data. That's the table name we're actually using. So we call on that musician's data. Closing. We have the insert. Inserting some fields. The first is the name. First name, which is the name of the singer or the musician. Elton John. Created arts. We're actually going to be using Eloquent to do this, but until then we still have to create it manually. Called new date and time, and updated arts. New date time. So from here we'll close out appropriately. So we have the table musicians data. Will be inserting the first name Elton John, created at the new date, updated at the new date and time, which is actually going to pick the PC's date and time. So let's run that. It's telling us it asks no column name. It's saying that it doesn't have a column name. Sorry, can you notice we actually didn't save the create musicians data table. Actually didn't save it. So we can actually do something quickly. We're going to create another migration file. So from there we get to migrate. So let's quickly go back. Let's quickly create a migration file, because we actually didn't save before issuing out the migration, and it's actually not capturing the state. So we quickly create a new migration file. From there we get to do the amends and migrate it successfully. Let's see how it goes. So I'm going to actually run PHP Artisan make migration. So we're going to say create musicians data 1. So we just have to name it different table. To create musicians as the name of the table, data 1. So now we've created another migration. Let me clear this out. So we have a fresh. So let us now refresh the tree. So we actually shouldn't make same mistake. So let's make pass in the table because we actually need the field of name. So I was surprised when I couldn't see it. That's fine. So these are to actually make amends. Don't feel that everything is over. It's actually going to be a string, and it's going to have a name field. So you make sure you save it because it wasn't saved. So it actually then migrates the name field. So it picks up the ID. So make sure it's saved. Again, saved again. So from here, we're going to migrate the database. So let's migrate using PHP Artisan migrate. Now we've migrated the musicians data 1 table. So from here we'll be moving to PHP Artisan Tinker. So we're going to still go back to issue out the statement, but now you need to change the migration table, which is musicians data 1 this time. So don't forget to do that. So after doing that, it should be fine because we now have a name field. So click our enter. Can you see that we have it true? So just now to make amends if there's any mistake that comes up. So that doesn't mean everything is over. So we've actually had that. So for us to actually see or to actually view the list that we have right there, we're going to run this query db. We call on the table, which is musicians data 1. So we've actually incremented that. A problem with that. Now we're going to run the get method to get all details. db table musicians table 1. We have a syntax error, which we really need to do it this way. So you get what's happening, or there's a white space problem. Just have to. There's a white space in line 1, and I've actually I don't have it. I don't have the colon there. So just make sure you are actually accurate with the syntax. It's going to try an error and make amends. So running that now, we have the first entry, which is Elton John, and can you see that we have the name created at the time created with the date and also when it was updated. So now I'm going to actually create one more musicians field, one more musician data. So I will actually bring back our query, which is db table musicians data 1, insert the name. So I'm going to change the name now to Michael Peters as one more entry. Michael Peters. So right there, we're going to create another entry, which is true. So we're going to actually check it out using this command. You notice now we have the first entry to John, second entry Michael Peters. So that's fine. We now have our two data right inside our database, which is okay. So we're going to display this right there in the view. So we'll be navigating to the musicians controller. Let's get to look at our controller which sits in the app. HTTP controllers, musicians controller.php, and we'll actually make some edits in the index method, whereby we're going to actually pass in something of this nature. We call on musicians variable, where we're going to call the DB table to actually get. So we actually run a command here, which is DB table musicians data 1 get. So we'll just pass in this same command here right inside the function. So it's going to be musicians data 1, that's the name of the table, and we're going to actually get that using the get method. Close it this way. DB table musicians data 1 is the name of the table, and we're going to get all data from this particular table. So our view is actually going to be a little bit modified, whereby we need to pass the compact and pass in the value, which is musicians. That's the compact, which is this value. So we save that, and to display this, we're going to move back to the index.blade.php to use a for each to spill out the musician's details. So let's go back to the resources, index.blade. Now we're going to use a for loop, for each loop. So we're going to do it this way. At for each. I'm going to call on musicians as musician. That's okay. And we're going to actually end for each. So right there, we're going to create a div tag inside this div tag. We're going to pass in with the curly braces, which is a musician name. So we are actually going to call the musician name, which is the field. Pass it this way, name. That's fine. Save it out. So from here, we'll move back to the controller to use the DB which is actually going to be the musicians controller. So we need to pass in this, use db. That's fine. Save it out, and we'll go back to our browser, which is going to be homestead app/musicians. Can you see that? All musicians, the first name, Elton John, the second, Michael Peters. That actually work perfectly, and I really like that. It's actually smooth and working. After there, we're going to actually look at another kind of identifier, where we're going to show a specific musician. Maybe you want to say musicians /1 or something, what's actually going to return. So we need to go back to the routes. Let's go back to the routes, which is and say, so we're going to actually do something here quickly. Let's go back to the route, which is the web PHP, and let's create another route to do something new, like get musicians /. So we're going to pass in something of this nature, and we're going to call it musician. And see that? And still have our comma. So we're going to call the musicians controller. Actually have single quotes. Which is actually going to point to @show function. That's it. Okay, save that. Right there, we'll move back to the musicians controller to create a function called show. So that's how it works. Now we need to return musician. Need to return musician. I have to do that this way. The $, just for. So let's continue. We're going to make amends here. We're not going to actually point it this way. We're going to call on this particular dbget. Let's call on this particular one. This time is going to be find, and we're passing the value of the ID, which is ID, just like this. And we need to return a view instead of just a static musician. So we're going to actually return this. Just copy out, paste. Let's call it musicians show. It's going to be a show, and we have the compact based on this value. So it's going to be musician, not musicians. So now we're going to create a show.blade.php so that we're going to pass in the view. Right inside the musicians, we're going to create a new file. We're going to call it show.blade.php. That's cool. From the index page, we're going to copy out some of the details there, paste it right there. We still have the extents. We take away the for each loop, and inside the h1 tag, we're going to pass in the values. So it's going to be 2 curly braces with a space. Now it's going to be musician, or we get in this time the name. So it's actually going to be like this. So we save out. Let's get to look at the musicians controller again. We have it set. The web PHP, so it's actually telling us that if we are in the musicians, so we have / an identifier. Is it the first? Is it the second? Based on what we have right inside the fields here. Elton John, which is the first field. The second field is Michael Peters. So we'll move back and go back to our show blade. So we have it set appropriately, and we have the musicians controller also set appropriately, calling the musicians data, find the view by ID. Now let's go back to our browser. So right there now, I need to issue out 1 to see. I see Elton John as the first identifier. The second one, Michael Peters. So you can see how we're trying to build a lot of things, and we're trying to modify the database to actually suit what we need it for. So from here, we'll be moving to the next module in this particular wonderful playlist, which is Laravel for beginners. I will employ you to stand by. Don't go anywhere. Watch out for the next module. And from now, I'll say bye-bye for now. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Have a wonderful time. Bye-bye.